Hello, welcome to the Pitcher Nail Down. I am Big Italy 42. He is Scott Mailwig at Sports 25 to Life. We're going to break down through each game. Well, each game is worth talking about pitchers. And we're going to give you some odds, who's the favorite, who we like, who we don't like, if we're stacking against them. Pretty much give you a good idea of your starting pitchers, your 1 on FanDuel, and your SP 1 and 2 on DraftKings. So
yep.
I'm going to go ahead and start things off here with Miami at Washington. And in this matchup, you've got David Phelps, a righty, against Jordan Zimmermann, who's also a righty. Looks like this line's staying pretty consistent so far. Minus 160 favorite for Zimmermann. I'm generally not a big fan of Jordan Zimmermann. I think he's a fine pitcher. I don't think he's a particularly great pitcher. I mean, he's about average, if you ask me, and I feel like he's priced like a guy who's well above average. So not a price that I like to pay for him. I mean, he's at $8,800 so far, or tonight on DraftKings, which, I mean, if you consider the guys around the price for him, I'm just not a fan. $8,900 on FanDuel. I'm not playing either one of these guys tonight.
No, I'm not really either. I mean, I don't mind Zimmermann. I don't feel great about it, though.
Yeah.
I mean, his numbers have started to come back around, at least peripheral-wise, to what he was last season a little bit. But he just hasn't looked great.
Yeah.
I think he's going to get there eventually, unless he's not healthy, which is definitely a legitimate concern. But I just can't pay $9,000 for him on a night where there's so many other top options that I'd rather have.
Yeah, and these guys among the lowest strikeout rates of any pitchers on the board today. Phelps walking 9% of guys. Neither guy with a ground ball rate over 40%. Just not a whole lot to like in this one.
Yeah, definitely not.
All right, moving on. By the way, I'm not necessarily stacking either of these teams either. I guess we should mention that real quick. But,
yeah, I'm not either. I mean, I just don't love that game in general for anybody.
Yeah, 7-run total. I mean, that right there is telling you you don't want to get a ton of exposure either. All right, next up, New York Yankees at Toronto Blue Jays. And this one, another matchup of pitchers that you don't mind picking on. Chase Whitley making his second start of the season against the artist formerly known as R.A. Dickey. He's just not very good right now. 9-run total right there. Vegas telling you, go ahead and get yourself some exposure to both sides of this, which also tells me I don't care that Chase Whitley's only $4,000 on DraftKings. I'm not even playing him in some tournaments probably. Much if I got some crazy stacks like Colorado, Arizona stacks where you can't afford someone, maybe I'll throw him in one if I have to. But really, neither guy inspiring much confidence, and I don't mind stacking either side of this game because these are two offenses that are producing at a fairly high level. Looks like the Yankees 12th in the league against righties so far this season, and Toronto is 8th in the league against righties. So, I mean, a lot of fireworks could be had in this one tonight.
Yeah, I actually like Whitley as a pitcher. He looked pretty good in that first game. He looked pretty good last year. I'm not going to play him tonight. I mean, this is the second highest run total of the night, and a lot of nights it would be the highest. So it's really hard to feel good about him against Toronto. I'd love to play him against somebody else, but I can't do that there. Dickey, I mean, he's that guy that 5% of the time he's going to look masterful because of that knuckleball, but it's just not something I want to bet on at this point. He just hasn't looked great recently. The Yankees have been hitting the ball really well. Nothing special here.
Yeah, pretty much get yourself some hitters from here. Don't waste your time on the pitchers.
Yep.
Next up, we have Aaron Harang, a righty, at Alex Wood, southpaw, Atlanta, minus 150 favorite. 7-run total tells you that they don't expect a whole lot of runs in this one. Aaron Harang been pitching well above his head so far this season. Been really good against righties, actually. And Atlanta's been a team who has been actually pretty good so far. 11th in the league against righties. You've got Alex Wood facing off the Phillies team, who's been a bad offense, but they've been league average against lefties, 15th in the league as far as WOBA goes. Yep. So 7-run total here tells you can look at Alex Wood in tournaments, but it concerns me at his price. He's $8,400 at DraftKings. His price at FanDuel is $7,700, so a little bit better. I mean, his big draw before was he had that huge strikeout upside. You know, he could throw up 10, 12 strikeouts at some times, but hasn't shown that at all this season. 16.3% is below league average. He's keeping the ball on the ground at 50% ground ball rate, and he's struggled with righties, which shouldn't hurt him too much with a lot of lefties in this Philly lineup. So, I mean, I think he makes for an interesting tournament play, but not a guy that I'm jumping out of my seat to roster either.
Yeah, definitely. I like him. I think there's some upside here. I mean, his control is what he's really struggled with so far in the season. His walk rate is up like 3 or 4%. Like you said, his strikeout rate is way down right now. If he's going to turn it around, this is going to be the game, though. I don't mind him as a GPP play on FanDuel. I think he's a really strong GPP play there.
Yeah.
I can't imagine him being very heavily owned. DraftKings even less so at that price with some of the other options on the board tonight, both lower and higher than him. I think he's a fine GPP play, but outside of that, I don't have a lot of trust in him. I think you could maybe. I would have a really hard time paying for him as my starting pitcher 2 on DraftKings in any format. If you're going Kershaw or Felix at the top, paying $8,400 for him is just really tough to do and get any kind of hitting going.
Yeah, and Aaron Harang on the other side, $7,500 on FanDuel, $67 on DraftKings. And if you look at his best start of the season, it just so happened to come against this same Atlanta team on the 24th. 8 innings, 2 hits, 1 walk, 6 Ks. You're sure as hell not expecting that type of performance again. But, I mean, he showed that he can compete against his team, and he's a guy that I hate to roster because I just don't think he's that good at this point in his career. But, I mean, $6,700, if you want him as a second tournament pitcher, it's not likely that he's going to kill you. He'll probably give you a quality start, 6, maybe 7 innings at best, 2-3 runs. You don't expect him to get crushed here. So if you need a filler that's going to be low owned, I guess I don't mind him on DraftKings. Not playing him as my only pitcher at $7,500 on FanDuel, though. Yeah,
same here. I don't mind that DraftKings price. Atlanta's surprisingly been, I believe, a top 10 team against right-handed pitching. Hold on one sec. Yeah, 11.
Yeah. Right there.
I mean, that's pretty solid and really surprising because coming into the season, I was expecting that to be one of the worst hitting teams in the league. But they've actually looked pretty good. Like you said, hard to really love him, but for $6,700, he can probably give you a quality start, like you were saying. With a little bit of upside, like you mentioned, with that first game against Atlanta this season. So he's an option.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on to a really interesting game here where you had an 8.5 run total. It's Tampa Bay at Boston. Jake Odorizzi, a righty, against Clay Buchholz, also a righty. Buchholz a -134 favorite. Looks like the total's been bet down from 9 to 8.5.
Yeah.
Buchholz is a smaller favorite, was 140 to start out. And this one's really interesting to me because you've got guys in this one like Clay Buchholz, who's $6,800, Odorizzi $71. And Odorizzi is the guy that showed big upside last year with his nice strikeout rate. Strikeout rate's down this year, but also his ground ball rate is finally up, and that was his biggest concern. He couldn't keep the ball on the ground. And, I mean, now 33 innings pitched this year is not allowed a home run. I mean, obviously, Boston, not the ideal environment or matchup to keep the ball in the park still, but I think he makes for an interesting option at $7,100. And Clay Buchholz on the other side, as we know, this is a really bad Tampa Bay lineup. They're 25th in the league against righties, so we've seen a lot of guys mowing them down this year. So honestly, in tournaments, I don't mind pairing either one of these guys, and I don't think the Buchholz is that bad of an option as an SP2 in some spots.
No, I like both of these guys a little bit more than Harang, actually, as GPP options. I'd prefer Buchholz just because Tampa Bay's offense just has not been able to get it going yet. He's the favorite in this one. I feel a little bit better about him. He's a little bit cheaper. I think Buchholz is going to be my starting pitcher, too, quite a bit today, actually. I mean, his strikeout rate's up at 28.5% right now. He's looked pretty good. I mean, we know he's talented. I mean, he was a high draft pick. He was a pretty highly touted prospect coming up. He got there, pitched well for a while, got hurt, and has struggled a little bit since then. But it looks like he's coming around again. Like you mentioned, the Boston offense has looked really good so far. Pedroia has been hitting. Martinez has been hitting. Hanley Ramirez has been on fire. So they're giving him a nice run total to work with most of the time. So I think he's a really strong play, especially in terms of getting the win tonight.
Yeah, and Buchholz is another one of those guys who just faced this team not too long ago on the 23rd. 6 innings, 2 hits, 1 earned run, 10 Ks. He did have 3 walks, which is a little bit uncharacteristic. He's not a guy that walks a ton of batters. A little bit more than you'd like, but like you said, I mean, he's got legitimate skills. I think he pitched a no-hitter one time. I don't think it was a perfect game, but what was it, like 2011 maybe?
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's got dominant stuff, as you see by the 10 Ks there. And, I mean, Tampa Bay's been the offense you want to pick on recently. So, certainly in tournaments, and I'm with you, SP2 on DraftKings. I don't mind him at all because at $6,800, even if he gets hit a little bit, if he eats up a couple innings, he's going to pay off that cheap price tag. So, I don't mind him at all.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, the Los Angeles Dodgers at the Milwaukee Brewers here. And I don't know if you've heard of him. Clayton Kershaw, pretty damn good. Somehow opened at a -168 favorite, which is baffling to me with this lineup. But -190 favorite now, 7-run total. And looks like Vegas is expecting most of those runs to come from the Dodgers side. Just so happens to be the worst offense against lefties facing Clayton Kershaw and the best offense against righties facing Kyle Loesch. So this is a recipe for a Dodger explosion tonight. I know you and I, many others, of course, expect Clayton Kershaw to dominate. His stats on the surface, his ERA, things like that, don't look particularly good. But we mentioned on the other podcast earlier, 33% strikeout rate. He's just getting it done. 50% ground ball rate's fine, a little bit below what his average. But his BABIP, I mean, he's allowing almost a 380 BABIP. Home run to fly ball rates over 22%. These are numbers that are not going to continue with Clayton Kershaw. Those are going to regress back. And, I mean, you couldn't find a better spot for him or for this Dodgers team as a stack tonight.
Yeah, I think he's in pretty good shape. I mean, it's really hard to argue with him, especially on FanDuel at 11-3, I think. Yeah. I mean, I'm basically just locking him in there for cash games. Probably doing the same on DraftKings because Felix is more expensive, really. I mean, I can't see a reason to pay for Felix over Kershaw for less against a Brewers team that's just been doing nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they've been awful. 25 weighted runs created plus for them is 75% below league average, just so you know. I mean, it's not even – it's like these are minor league numbers. I mean, it's bad. Now they get to face the best pitcher in the game who's gotten a little bit unlucky. I mean, I expect huge things out of Clayton Kershaw tonight. Like, I'll be stunned if he doesn't pitch deep, go 9-10 Ks, and just mow through this lineup. So
yeah, he definitely should. I mean, on the other side, we got Los, not a guy I'm going after. We talked on the DraftKings podcast, so we're targeting a bunch of lefties against him today. I don't even mind a couple righties against him. Like you said, it looks like the 7-run line is expected to be mostly from the Dodgers side of the game, so I'm just ignoring Los, going to attack some hitters against him.
Yeah, I mean, he's given up 8 home runs already this season in this short season, and he's actually – his career numbers say that he hasn't been terrible against righties, but so far this year, 461 will be allowed to righties. Yeah. All over Adrian Gonzalez, some of these other guys. I mean, even Scott Van Slyke is really cheap on FanDuel at $2,500 if he gets a nice lineup spot. So Dodgers are one of my favorite stacks tonight. I'm obviously putting Kershaw in there with that stack because you expect he's going to get the win, and Kershaw will be in most of my lineups tonight anyway. So really not much more analysis necessary here. Everything going in the Dodgers' favor tonight.
Yep, absolutely. Moving on to this Cubs-Cardinals game. You talked a little bit about Carlos Martinez on the DraftKings podcast. He's a guy that I think is a decent option. I prefer some of these like high 6, low 7 guys like Odorizzi and Buchholz to him a little bit, but I don't have anything against Carlos Martinez. I think he's a fine option. I think he's probably a little bit underpriced on DraftKings if anything. He probably deserves to be more in the low 8s or so with the way he's pitched so far, 23% strikeout rate. His walk rate's a little high, but that's to be expected from him. It's been that way throughout his career, minor leagues and majors. So, I mean, the Cubs strike out a lot. I think he's got some upside here. The Cardinals have been putting runs on the board. I think they'll be solid against Travis Wood today. I think Holiday has a nice game. A couple of these other right-handed bats for the Cardinals, so I think they give him some nice run support. And I think Carlos Martinez is a pretty strong GPP play. He's going to be under-owned because of this price, especially on FanDuel. I don't know if I'm willing to pay that in cash games, but I think he's a solid GPP play.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, he's a sizable favorite, like you mentioned, minus 142. Looks like the line's going up in his favor as well. 7.5 run total. Once again, I mean, looks like St. Louis expected to score more runs here, of course. Travis Wood's been kind of an odd pitcher so far this year. I mean, he's had a couple really good games, had a couple really bad games. I mean, he mowed down Pittsburgh last time, 9 Ks in 7 innings.
He's got a 27% strikeout rate on the season so far. I mean, he looked bad last year. He's been quite a bit better this year, though. Just overall, I mean, his ground ball rate's down a little bit, but he's always been more of a fly ball pitcher anyway, so I'm not overly concerned with a 5% loss in that. I think it'll even back out to around 33 or 35 or something like that at some point. I just don't want to attack the Cardinals' offense right now. I think they look too good. There's a little bit of an advantage with him being left-handed and not having to deal with Matt Carpenter raking righties, but I mean, with Holiday facing a lefty, a couple of these other guys in the Cardinals lineup, I just don't feel great about it today as the underdog.
Yeah, and I mean, he's been actually really good against lefties this year, 197, but he's been pretty good against lefties throughout his career. But I'm with you here. I'm not trying to attack this Cardinals lineup, but I mean, if you look at all the things, everything going, he's obviously not a favorite, but at $7,200 on DraftKings and his price on FanDuel at $76, I mean, I guess I might throw him in one single tournament because he will have that lefty-lefty matchup to kind of neutralize Matt Carpenter. But, I mean, at the same time, I don't like targeting the Cardinals. There's a lot of big hitters, a lot of contact hitters in that lineup, too. All right,
yeah,
moving on to here, the next game. Looks like it's Oakland at Minnesota, and this one's going to be interesting. I know there's a guy you and I are considering on one side of this one. Jesse Hahn. Looks like he's a very, very slight underdog. Was a small favorite, now he's a slight underdog. He's plus 100, even money on him against Phil Hughes. 8-run total here tells you, you know, Oakland's been swinging some hot bats. I mean, you look at what they've been doing. They're 4th in the league against righties. Then you look on the other side, Minnesota 22nd in the league against righties. But I don't think Minnesota's been overpowered by some really good pitchers this year. So I don't think they're terrible. I'm not saying I'm going out of my way to target them, but I mean, you got Jesse Hahn at $6,000 on DraftKings. He's not a guy that strikes out a lot of pitchers or players, but he's efficient. I mean, he's a guy that usually he gets it done because he's a contact pitcher. 12.6% strikeout rate you don't like, but you love the 53.6% ground ball rate. So this isn't a Minnesota team that hits for much power. So if he can keep the ball on the ground, be efficient, he could give you 6 or 7 solid innings here.
Yeah, I mean, exactly like you said, great ground ball rate, not going to strike out a lot of guys. He looked really good last year for the Padres pitching in the National League, pitching in Petco. It's going to be a little tougher in the American League, but I think he's a fine option. He's more of a cash game guy for me, where I think I can get 6 innings, 4 Ks, maybe only 3 or 4 earned runs against him. I mean, he's not a guy I'm really excited about. The Twins have been swinging a pretty decent bat lately. Nothing too special there. On the other side, Phil Hughes, he's just too expensive for me. He's been the definition of average so far this year. Yeah. And he's a guy that's prone to blow up for a while at times. I actually like a bunch of the A's bats, especially the lefties against him tonight. So not a guy I'm targeting for 8,100 on DraftKings and 7,400 on FanDuel.
Yeah, I mean, Phil Hughes, what he's got going for him, he doesn't walk anyone. We know historically good in that regard. 1.5% walk rate so far this year. Right about a league average strikeout rate. Like you said, he's a fly ball pitcher, though, which plays into the hands of some of these Oakland bats. I'm with you there. I like the Oakland bats as a stack. Hughes has already given up 6 homers this year, so he's been getting hit hard when he's giving up contact. We know he's a fly ball pitcher, and these guys have a ton of power. I mean, Stephen Vogt hit 2 homers again last night. Yep. A lot of these guys, like Davis, is minimum salary on FanDuel if you want to go that route. I mean, it's hard to stack them, of course, because you've got like Davis and Billy Butler both being first basemen on both major sites there. But, you know, at the same time, you get yourself some exposure. Maybe roll out 2 stacks, one with Davis, one with Butler. And, I mean, I don't mind it at all. I mean, these are guys that hit the ball in the air against a fly ball pitcher. So
yep.
A lot of upside there with these guys. All right, next up, we have the biggest favorite of the night. And, yeah, you did not mishear that with Clayton Kershaw and Felix Hernandez on the board. Dallas Keuchel, or Keuchel, I'm not even sure how you say it either way. Minus 200 favorite here against Texas, 8.5 run total. And that right there tells you Ross Detweiler, Mr. Reliever turned starter, kind of for a little bit right now. I mean, they're expecting him to get rocked, and I'm expecting him to get rocked. I love this Houston lineup tonight. This team's on fire. I believe they won 9 games in a row, something like that.
Yeah, I think so. They've been crushing lefties too, is the big thing.
Yeah, they're destroying lefties right now. I mean, you've got Detweiler there. Astros up to 10th in the league in lefties, but if you look over the past week or so, I don't know the actual number on it, but it's got to be even higher than that. They're destroying everyone, really starting to get it going, hitting for power. Evan Gattis with 4 homers his last 3 games. George Springer's getting it going. He's stealing bases, hitting for power. A lot of bad things here for Ross Detweiler. And Dallas over here, I mean, he's $8,000 on DraftKings, and he's a little bit more expensive at $8,500 on FanDuel, but I absolutely love him tonight. League high ground ball rate at 65.3%. Yep. Doesn't walk a lot of guys at 16.3%. Doesn't strike out a lot of guys at 16.3%. 0 home runs allowed so far. And this Texas lineup, I mean, their second best hitter, Adrian Beltre, we talk about him all the time. Keep expecting him to get it going, and he just doesn't. So
yeah,
you're pretty much looking at a lefty-lefty matchup against Prince Fielder, and then a whole bunch of nothing. So
yeah, I really like him. I love him tonight. He's probably the one guy that I feel good about paying $8,000 for as a second starting pitcher on DraftKings. I don't mind him as your starting pitcher 1 on both sites, really. I think FanDuel at $8,500 is a pretty decent price. If you want to stack up your hitting lineup, I mean, I think him and maybe Hahn or something like that is a pretty solid cash game play. If you really like some of the more expensive bats today, you want to go after that Colorado game or something, even though it has a little bit of rain worries there. He's just a really strong option today. I mean, he's at an 8.2% walk rate, which I think for his career he's at about 5. So if he can bring that down a little bit, I mean, his numbers could be even better. And his strikeout rate is a little bit lower than it's been in his career this year too. So, I mean, for as good as he's looked, I mean, I think he could be even better going forward.
Yeah, and it's a Texas team that's ranked 9th against lefties so far this season, but they're not hitting for any power. I mean, their team ISO is minuscule. So, yeah, they're making contact and hitting the ball, but they're not hitting it a long way. And when he gives up contact, it's on the ground, as we mentioned. Like he's the league leader. I believe he led the league in ground ball rate last year. I'm not sure if he was
63.
Yeah, but
he threw enough, I think.
Yeah, I mean he was tremendous last year. So this is no fluke. This isn't just a guy getting lucky. I mean this is what he does. He's a ground ball machine, and those are the type of guys you want to target in your games because when they do give up hits, it's not going to hurt you a lot. So once again, he's in a great spot, and obviously Vegas agrees with us with him being that monster favorite tonight.
Yeah.
All right, here we come to the game where we're not even allowed to say pitcher because it's in Coors Field. It really doesn't matter who the favorite is. Somehow it's Tyler Matzik. I guess that's just because he's at home. -120 favorite. Over/under of 10. Josh Collminter on the other side of this one. I mean, you're obviously not paying for either pitcher, so don't mishear me here. But he pitched well against Colorado in Arizona, very well, in fact. 8 innings, 5 hits, 1 earned, 6 Ks. He's not a big strikeout guy. He's not usually a guy that pitches deep into games. But at the same time, I mean, he did go 8 there, 6 innings pitched, 9 against San Francisco. So he's a guy who's been showing some upside recently. And I'm not saying don't stack against him, but he's not been a bad pitcher this year.
No. I mean, both these guys have looked okay so far this year, actually. Matzik really struggles with walks, which is his big thing. That's the guy I'd prefer to target today is the Arizona bats against him. Like you mentioned, Collminter's been pitching halfway decent. I'm not going to touch either of these guys as pitchers. No. If I'm stacking one of those two teams, it's probably going to be Arizona, though.
Yeah, and both sides kind of anticipating that, it seems, because they've got the prices jacked up for it. I mean, Paul Goldschmidt is $6,100 on FanDuel. I think that's the most expensive hitter I've seen at FanDuel all season. I mean, every night you've got pitchers that are cheaper.
Yeah, they're doing a nice job of tweaking the salary since they softened them up. I mean, if they can just keep everybody from being on the exact same guys at the top, I like the soft salaries. I think it gives you a lot more options at the bottom where we're not all forced into the same 2,200 outfielder or whatever that day. You mentioned Ike Davis is really cheap there. I mean, he's not a guy that's ever going to be over-owned, so there's no reason not to have him at a near minimum price all the time. So I really like what they're doing, bumping up the obvious guys, keeping everyone else pretty soft. So I feel good about that.
I'm with you there. I was pretty critical of it at first. I was not a big fan, and then I realized, if they can make these type of adjustments like DraftKings has been making in certain situations and certain matchups, then I'm a big fan because, sure, you got your guys that are expensive, your guys that are cheap. You're still forcing people to make decisions. You're not just making
that's all it is. If you can avoid everyone inserting the same couple of guys to start their lineup, I mean, it doesn't really matter what your pricing looks like as long as it's okay.
Yeah, it's just helping me score more points each night. Everyone else can too, but I'll just score more too.
Yeah. Moving on to this next game, Seattle at the Angels. We mentioned Felix. Tough to play on DraftKings where he costs more than Kershaw at 12-2. A little bit less on FanDuel at 11,000. I think he's the best GPP play on the board because everyone's going to be on Kershaw. If Kershaw gives up a few runs and Felix throws 8 shutout innings, I mean, you're going to be way ahead of everyone. Because, I mean, I'm trying to guess what Kershaw's ownership rate is going to be, but I'm thinking like 60+% in cash games, probably around 35-40 in GPPs at least.
It should be at least 60 in cash games if you ask me.
It might even be higher than that, honestly. It really depends on what people are trying to do for their second starting pitcher and how much they want to play this Coors game and stuff like that. I guess the rain will make a difference there. But yeah, I mean, I love Felix's GPP play. I don't mind him as a cash game play, but I'd rather just play Kershaw. We talked about Shoemaker on the DraftKings pod. Has been really struggling. 26% ground ball rate, only 18% strikeout rate, which was one of his better aspects last year. I think he was over 23% last year.
Yeah, he was great at strikeouts last year. It seems like his velocity's down. He's getting hit hard by lefties and righties alike. And what's strange to me about this one is you got a 7-run total, but Felix opened at a -149 favorite, now down to 133. And I'm over here searching for reasons because this Angels offense has been 28th in the league against righties. Yes, Albert Pujols is just now back, but he's not the Pujols that he once was. He's more of a name than anything.
That's been happening with this Angels line almost every day. On Friday, I was playing Heston, and I had him locked in my lineup basically all day, and all day the Angels' run total was rising. He ended up being fine, but I'm curious of why that keeps happening too. I don't know if the public just thinks that they're a better hitting team than the stats show. I'm guessing that's what it is. And I don't really believe that. So I feel really good about Felix tonight.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, he seems like you said, it's unfortunate that he's more expensive than Kershaw, but all that's going to do is drive down his ownership percentage in GPPs for you. So, Yeah, I mean, he makes for a great swerve against a team that, like you said, it's a misconception that they're really good against righties. They've actually been one of the worst, and it hasn't really been particularly close. So, yeah, I'm with you there, and I don't mind a lot of these Seattle bats. I mean, I'm going to be stacking some Seattle bats. We talked about on the DraftKings pod. You know, you got Seager, Cano, guys that aren't hitting the ball particularly well, but Shoemaker has been really getting roughed up by both sides here. I mean, the guy's really been struggling. You look at just even his last 2 games, and I mean, he's gone a total of 8 2/3 innings. He's given up 8 earned runs. He's given up at least 3 earned runs in every single game. Multi-homers in 2 of 4. Not keeping the ball on the ground. His ground ball percentage is just absolutely pathetic right now where you're looking at it. It's at 26.9%. So, I mean, yeah, I expect that the Seattle team's going to get to him pretty easily.
Yep, last game of the night now here. I think this is a really interesting one as far as GPP options go. San Diego and the Giants. At San Francisco, Bumgarner versus Ross, 6.5 over/under. There's a lot of potential here. We talked about the Padres being pretty good against lefties, but Bumgarner is a little bit different of a story. I think he's a really strong GPP play. I think he's going to be super low owned because of how good of matchups Felix and Kershaw both have. Some of the much less expensive options. He's still a 10-4 on DraftKings, 9,800 on FanDuel. I think he's gotten matched up with Kershaw in each of his last 2 starts. Is that right?
I think he got scratched from one of them. If I remember right, I know he got pushed back, or maybe he got pushed back into the start with Kershaw.
Yeah, he got pushed back into the second one against Kershaw. That's what it was.
That's right.
So I mean, that's been tough as far as getting wins. So I mean, I think he's going to take off here, getting a couple good matchups in a row. Unfortunately, he has to face Ross tonight because Ross has been pitching pretty well. 28.9% strikeout rate. He's another GPP play that I love today. Yeah. I mean, he's just got massive upside. Unfortunately, he's the underdog, but as far as GPP plays go, I mean, I don't think he's such a bad underdog that he can't get a win here. So I think there's a lot of upside with him.
Yeah, I'm with you there. He's a guy that I love targeting. At the same time, the Giants pretty patient hitters, walking 8.7% of the time against righties. They don't strike out a ton either at 17.8%, which kind of takes away a little bit from Tyson Ross. But it looks like the public is on Tyson Ross here a little bit. Started out as Bumgarner minus 165 favorite, now down to 137. So I'm with you there. If Ross can keep those walks under control, I mean, the guy's got massive upside. You already mentioned his strikeout rate. It's the second highest of any pitcher on the board this season, to the board tonight behind Clayton Kershaw. So, I mean, he's got big-time upside. And this Giants offense isn't hitting the ball particularly well either. So
yeah, he's been throwing pretty deep into games, too, which is great to see from him. His really only flaw right now, I mean, he's got a 55% ground ball rate. His only real flaw is this 14% walk rate, which is way up from last season. So if he can settle that down a little bit to the 7-8% he was at last year, I mean, he could be in for a great season.
Yeah, another thing is keeping the ball in the park. I mean, he's 55.6% ground ball rate is great, but he has given up a home run in each of his last 3 games. So certainly pitching at San Francisco is going to help that a lot, because if you look at where his last couple starts were, he played at home against Houston, yes, but then it was at Colorado, not at Chicago. 2 places that we see a lot of home runs, of course. So
yeah, his fly ball to home run ratio is way above his career average right now. So you got to think that's going to come back down, like you said, pitching in San Francisco tonight, pitching in San Diego throughout the season. So I think he's in a great spot.
Yeah, absolutely. One more thing I want to mention here is if you're not playing Madison Bumgarner, a lot of these Padres bats, like we know, can mash lefties. You got Derek Norris, Upton, Kemp. So a nice little under-owned stack there. If you know if Bumgarner is going to be under-owned, that means that the opposing offense will be under-owned as well, especially at 6.5 run totals. So I don't mind stacking a couple of these guys in a GPP and hoping that Bumgarner just doesn't have it tonight.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, with that, that's going to do it for us here. Check us out on Twitter at DF Cafe. Lots of great content at dailyfantasycafe.com for tonight's slate, for all the other slates, and we will see you guys next time.